Everything you think you know about German fighter pilots in World War II is wrong, fundamentally wrong. Hollywood, history books, even documentaries have fed the same recycled myths for 80 years. And millions of people believe these myths are historical facts. Today we're destroying every myth about the Luftwaffe's fighter pilots with documented evidence and verified sources. What you'll discover will change how you see the entire air war. Let's expose the truth behind the myth. Everyone knows German pilots were ruthless killing machines, bred for war. Naturally superior fighters who never showed weakness. Pure propaganda. Here's the shocking reality from the pilots themselves. Günther Rall, Germany's third highest ace with 275 kills, revealed the human side in documented interviews. When asked about his most difficult moments, he admitted, "We had unfortunately been assigned to escort Juncker's U-87B Stukas, very slow-flying aircraft. We had to fly close escort, which was wrong. We had to stick with them, giving up all of our superiority and speed. We escorted them over the channel where the Spitfires and Hurricanes waited upstairs for us, and we had tremendous losses. I lost my group commander. The adjutant and all 3 squadron commanders were killed in a time span of about 2 weeks. I, as a young lieutenant, had to take over my 8th Staffel as commander at the age of 22. 22 years old, suddenly commanding a squadron after watching his superiors die in 2 weeks. This wasn't the myth of invincible warriors Hollywood sold you." German pilot training collapsed catastrophically during the war, and the numbers prove it. By the beginning of 1944, German fighter pilots were joining their operational units with only about 160 hours flying training. This compared with more than double that figure for their counterparts in the RAF and the USAAF. But it got worse. During late spring, standards fell yet further. When the B flying schools were disbanded, fighter pilots were now sent into action with only about 112 hours flying, made up as follows: a school 2 hours glider flying and 50 hours powered flying on elementary types, fighter school 40 hours, replacement fighter group 20 hours. The cause was systematic destruction of the training system. Early in 1942, many Ju-52 aircraft, together with their instructor pilots, were removed from the sea, blind flying and bomber schools, and sent to Russia to supplement the fleet of air transports. Owing to actual losses and shortages at the frontline units, many of the instructors and aircraft were never returned to the training organization. The brutal mathematics that killed the Luftwaffe. American pilots received over 300 hours of training by 1944, while German pilots got 112 hours. The myth of superior German training, propaganda covering up institutional collapse. Every war movie shows German pilots winning because they flew better planes. The aces themselves destroy this myth. Günther Rall flew captured Allied aircraft at the German Fighter Leader School and revealed the shocking truth. "I had a very good impression of the P-51 Mustang, where the big difference was the engine. When we received these aircraft, we flew for about 300 hours in them. In the P-51 there was no oil leak, and that was just fantastic. The cockpits of all enemy aircraft were much more comfortable. You could not fly the Bf-109 for 7 hours. The cockpit was too tight, too narrow. The P-51 cockpit was for me a great room, just fantastic." The fuel capacity difference was devastating. I think this was the decisive factor. They flew for 7 hours and we flew for 1 hour and 20 minutes. You would have to get down because you were short on fuel, then look for the nearest airbase, and they still had fuel for 3 hours more. His final assessment: the P-51 was a damned good airplane, and it had tremendous endurance, which for us was a new dimension. I consider the P-51 the best battle horse you had of all the fighter escorts. Every documentary claimed German pilots had superior shooting skills. The documented training collapse destroys this myth completely. The so-called Windhund program, which provided for the hasty conversion of ex-bomber pilots by giving them 20 hours flying in fighters, resulted in a stream of pilots little able to stand up to the enemy. The final collapse. In September 1944, the Luftwaffe Flying Training Organization received its death blow. With the systematic wrecking of the German synthetic fuel industry by Allied strategic bombers, Aviation fuel production fell so far beneath Luftwaffe requirements that operations had to be curtailed. By February 1945, the Luftwaffe Aircrew Training Organization had, to all purposes, ceased to exist. By 1945, there was no gunnery training left. New pilots were sent to combat with 20 hours in fighters and no combat training. The myth of superior German marksmanship, desperation, not skill. War movies show German pilots following chivalric codes until the final day. Rall's documented experiences reveal the chaos of war's final stages. His arrival at his final command in 1945. When I arrived at the wing to take over, I came by jeep because I had no aircraft. When I approached the base, I saw that some airplanes were standing out on the apron, and my driver said, "Oops, we are being attacked." It was an attack by P-38 Lightnings, and when I finally arrived, there were 15 of our aircraft in flames. The complete breakdown of operations. The next day we were transferred to the south, and from there on we had no solid operations. We had no radar, no air situation. We had only narrow contact to higher authority. The main fight for me was to try and get fuel for the aircraft. Without it, we could not fly, naturally. By early 1945, what we were doing was looking for targets of opportunity. We had no idea where the enemy was at any time. We were totally in the dark. This wasn't honor, this was chaos and desperation. Everyone knows Germany lost the air war because of production numbers. The documented pilots' losses reveal the real catastrophe. The final dissolution. On the way to Salzburg, I dissolved the wing as the war was over and told the group commanders, "This thing is over and you had better go home." We gave all that we had, including our food, to the airmen and ground personnel. Then we gave a final salute, and everyone went on his own. The pilot retention disaster was documented by the numbers. Roughly 12,000 German day fighter pilots were killed or are still missing in action, with a further 6,000 being wounded. The Zerstörer pilots suffered about 2,800 casualties killed or missing, plus another 900 wounded. Germany's real mistake wasn't production. It was keeping their best pilots in combat until they died, while Allied pilots rotated home to train replacements. The truth about German fighter pilots isn't myths about superior training, better aircraft, or fanatical ideology. It's a tragedy documented in their own words. Günther Rall's final assessment sums it up. Outstanding. The British pilots were a well-trained and highly motivated force, with good equipment and good morale. I had the highest respect for them. They weren't superhuman aces. They were pilots trying to survive a war they knew they couldn't win, flying inferior aircraft with inadequate fuel and training, fighting impossible odds against better-equipped enemies they respected. The real story is more human and more complex than Hollywood's version, but myths sell better than the truth. So, the myth continues and the truth gets lost.